I'm always ready.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So just to start off, if you could give us a little bit of insight into how a private practice doctor got started in the world of clinical research.
Yeah, Taylor, it's kind of crazy. Why on earth would I be doing clinical research? But research has always been in my veins. When I was after college, I went to American Red Cross and did a year of research at their headquarters in Maryland, near Washington, D.C. And then went off to medical school. I became interested in kidney transplantation. And so I actually got a Howard Hughes Medical Research Fellowship and spent a year at Harvard Medical School doing research on kidney transplantation. And then when I went off to UCLA to do residency, there's actually a 1 year research of 1 year of research built into the program. And during that time, I worked with a man who's very influential in outcomes research, a guy named Mark Litwin, who's now Chief of Urology at UCLA, but he's basically the father of outcomes research in urology. He's done some really amazing things. And he and I basically built an outcomes research engine for prostate cancer. So it was basically SurveyMonkey about 10 or 15 years before SurveyMonkey even existed. In fact, if we were smart, we should have just taken our idea. This has how early it was. Only 5 to 10% of the patients in the study, and these were fairly affluent people in Los Angeles, only 5 or 10% even had email.
Oh my gosh.
So this was, 1997, 1998. And so we used a SurveyMonkey-like instrument that we actually had to build with some of the engineering professors at UCLA to integrate people's responses and find out about quality of life with prostate cancer. And so I had $1 million worth of grant money, and I was all set up to do this academic urology career. And then I married my wife, and my wife looked at me and said, well, do you like to do research? I like research. Do you like writing grants? I said, no, I don't like writing grants. Do you like giving presentations? Well, that's okay. Do you like writing papers? Well, it's kind of a waste of time. And she said, well, what the hell are you doing? Go get yourself a job. And so I moved up to Northern California and got myself a job in general urology. And I always liked new technology. In fact, I was one of the first in the country to use a robot to operate on people's prostates. I was one of the first to use an MRI to diagnose prostate cancer, one of the first to use lasers to remove prostate tissue. And then I discovered Gainswave sort of by accident, came out to Florida, did the training at Gainswave, and really fell in love with the technology. But I saw from the very beginning that the protocols that we were using were kind of arbitrary. They were based on some studies, and they were based on what we knew kind of worked, but they weren't optimized and they weren't individualized to patients. And so I started talking to Mark White, the CEO of Gainswave, about, what can we do as a large organization to begin to improve outcomes for this amazing technology that we all, as Gainswave providers, we all know it works. But if you go to a urology meeting like the American Urologic Association, or if you look at the Sexual Medicine Society of North America, their position papers, their position statements are that this hasn't been fully proven yet for the treatment of erectile dysfunction. And part of the reason for that is that we all know that it works, but it doesn't work on everyone. So the critical thing is, who does it work on? So as a private practice doctor, anyone of you that are out there that are listening, we all know that the worst feeling in the world is when a patient comes up to you and says, how come it didn't work? It may have worked for other people, but it didn't work for me. And that's a really lousy feeling. And so I wanted to do whatever I could so that I didn't have to experience that. So that if I treated a patient, I knew damn well that it was going to work, and I could tell the patient these are going to be the beneficial effects. You're not going to go from 70 years old as a diabetic to the way that you were when you were 20 years old, but this is what you can more than likely experience. And also we can individualize protocols so that we don't treat a 55-year-old guy who just wants to get off Viagra the same as a 75-year-old guy that wants to get off Trimix injections. And so I began to think about what can we do to do that? And since we have such an amazing network of incredible physicians, both urologists and non-urologists at Gainswave, I wanted to access the network that we have to create a large study. And just so you know how amazing we are, the academic urologists, I know this just from what some other people have told me, tried to do the same thing. So the guys at in San Diego and in Chicago and in Miami and a number of other academic institutions tried to pull together a study like we're doing, and they weren't able to do it. And actually of interest, what?
So why is that? And what's so different about the sweep and swap studies? What limited other studies before this?
Yeah, actually, that's a great question. So when I started conceptualizing doing this, I called up Mark Litwin, who put me in touch with the head of the men's health section in the urology department at UCLA. And I said, well, why don't we just do this study? It's a clinical observational study. Shouldn't be a big deal. We raise a little bit of money and do the study. And he said, it's going to be a very expensive study. And then on top of it, any research money that we bring in, UCLA is going to take 55% of that money for institutional, whatever, to pay the employees and pay for new buildings, et cetera, et cetera. And so then I called up my friend who's the head of the men's health clinic at Cleveland Clinic, and I got the same response. And then I called my friend who's the head of the chief urologist at Vanderbilt. I got the same story. And what I realized is that because it's not FDA cleared for this specific indication, and two, because there's so much bureaucracy in academic medicine, none of these guys could actually pull a study like this off. And I said, well, I'm in private practice. I can do whatever the hell I want. I said, as long as I have IRB approval. And so I began investigating how it would work. And so fortunately, I found Dr. Scott Liu, who also has a master's in clinical research at UCSF, and hired him. And he and I have been running the SWEET study ever since. And as you know, I love coming up with names and icons. And so I was on an airplane. I have 4 kids, so I hardly get any free time, but my best thinking time is when I'm on airplanes. I think of almost every new idea I have on airplanes. And I was thinking of what could I do? Because every study has like a cool name, like Impact or this or that. So I said, shock wave erection enhancement trial, SWEET. And there it was. That's how SWEET came to be. And then, I worked with Jeremy Edwards on identifying some really excellent high volume shockwave Gainswave providers within the Gainswave network. And we sent out invitations to all those folks. And there's a whole lot that goes into creating these studies, from getting institutional review board approvals and creating the network, figuring out how to create the databases and the questionnaires that you're going to use, and then also making it so that both physicians and patients will actually give you the data. You could have the most beautiful study in the world, but if the physicians or the patients feel like it's a burden for them to participate, they'll never do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we really focused on that.
How exactly do you motivate the patients to participate?
That's a great question, because everyone's busy these days and everyone is pressed for time. But the critical thing is, within a year or two, we're going to have some amazing data. The largest study on shockwave therapy is 156 patients, and we're over 100 patients already. And we've only been recruiting for a couple of months, and we're really picking up steam. We've picked up some new offices that are high volume offices. And my goal, like I've always said, is to get between 1,000 and 3,000 patients. And that would really just be incredible. Mm-hmm. These days, there's so much information out there and everyone's competing for your time, that even if tomorrow I invented a pill that could cure cancer, if nobody learned about it, if nobody knew about it, it wouldn't go anywhere. So here we have this amazing technology that naturally can help improve your erectile function. I mean, what could be better than that? Maybe curing cancer, but that's about it. And, and still there's not a lot of press. There's not that many people that know about it. I mean, you know, folks like myself are always out on podcasts and on television and writing things to tell people about Gainswave, but still there's a whole host of people that don't really know that it exists. And so, you know, first of all, getting the word out there. Now, if we have a study that we publish and present at a major meeting, and it's got 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 patients that shows the improvement that we all see as Gainswave providers, that's going to make CNN, that's going to make Fox News, that's going to make the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, or, you know, all these publications that have high volume, but also people trust, right? People go on Facebook now and they think everything is fake news. They think everything the Russian is put on. But if you read about this amazing study on this new technology that a couple thousand men have experienced an improvement in erectile function due to this totally non-invasive, non-painful technology, all of a sudden, everyone and their third cousin is going to be hunting for a Gainswave provider. And so that's really the first outcome that I'm looking for, is to get enough patients into the study that it's going to make a huge impact, both at the urology level, but also at the regular, you know, day-to-day folks level. So getting into USA Today or New York Times or CNN, and that's really going to elevate Gainswave to the next level.
So it's really getting the critical mass to make people, you know, have to pay attention. And then once people start paying attention, then they'll see that what a viable and, you know, non-invasive and great tool this is in curing erectile dysfunction. So how would you say that providers can possibly get involved or, you know, find out more about the SWEET study as it unfolds?
Sure. So we have a Facebook page. We're a little busy to put a lot of stuff up on the Facebook page, but we do post from time to time. And also I'll post interesting articles that I find. You know, I read all the sexual medicine journals, the Journal of Sexual Medicine, the International Reviews of Sexual Medicine. I'm part of the SMSNA, which is the Sexual Medicine Society of North America, and the International Society of Sexual Medicine. And so, like, for example, there was a really good article a little while ago. A lot of people ask, well, can you do this on men who are taking aspirin or on blood thinners? And so there was a group out of Greece that actually asked that question, and they presented the data. And so I'll put interesting stories like that or interesting papers up there about that kind of stuff. If you have a high volume shockwave practice and you're doing maybe 5 or 10 Gainswaves a month and you want to join the SWEET study, we're more than happy to add you. So this is what the patient enrollment brochure looks like. And so what we ask you to do if you're a SWEET study provider is to hand the patient the brochure and tell them how important it is for them to participate in the study. And the thing is, a lot of times people say, well, you know, let's pay it forward. Let me take your time so that somebody in the future will benefit. But actually, the patients that participate in the SWEET study will directly benefit themselves, because they may get an initial treatment, but part of what we're doing is improving protocols. So when they come back in 6 months or a year, the Gainswave providers will know better how to treat them. So the data that they give us, we're going to use to help them. And there are only a couple studies out there that show how long the effects of shockwave therapy last, right? So that it's supposed to be maybe the effects last about 50% at a year or two. But I want to, if we have the funding, I want to follow our patients out for years and years and years and get a longitudinal database of patients with erectile dysfunction who've undergone Gainswave, who've had other interventions, and see how they do. How long does it last? What's the natural decline of erectile function? And what can we do to intervene to keep erectile function stable or improve it over time? And that no one's ever done that. That's going to be just amazing. And that's going to benefit the very patients that participate in the study. And so if you're a SWEET study provider out there, that's what I would ask you to tell these patients is you're not just paying it forward to the new guys that have ED in a couple of years. When you come back in a year or two to my office, and instead of 65, you're 66 or 67, we're going to know a lot more about how to treat you and how to improve things for you. Now, the other things that we track include whether men take nitric oxide boosters, whether men are using a vacuum erection device, whether men are using PDE5 inhibitors, whether men are using PRP. And so it's not, the study isn't optimized for those kind of things, but we can begin to get a clue as to how much those things help. And then we can design better studies in the future to look more specifically at those variables.
Right. So there'll be kind of like satellite studies all attached to this general SWEET study as its hub.
Exactly. And I offer to any SWEET study provider that is contributing data and patients to us, you know, we're going to have a massive database. And there could be literally dozens of papers written out of this database, you know, diabetics versus non-diabetics, smokers versus non-smokers, 6 treatments versus 12 treatments, nitric oxide booster versus no nitric oxide booster, 50-year-olds versus 70-year-olds. I mean, there's a huge amount of data and studies that you can produce out of this. And it's fun. You know, you go and if you query the database, you get the data, we'll provide you the data, you write it up as an abstract, you present it at an international or national meeting, people ask you questions, you know, you get a little bit of your 15 minutes of fame.
Mm-hmm.
And you feel like you're contributing to not just treating patients, but contributing to the knowledge of what you're doing.
Right. Yeah. So we just, thank you for that. We just got a couple questions in from the live feed. Can you just clarify how many patients per month is high volume for somebody to get involved?
You know, if you're signing up 5 new patients a month, that would be a good contribution to the SWEET study. And yeah, let me give you my email address, or you can just send it to research@BrandeisMD, BrandeisMD.com.
Okay,
So
cool.
if you'd like to be involved, just send an email to research@BrandeisMD.com and let us know that you want to be a SWEET study provider. And absolutely, we're looking for more providers. You know, I want to create by far and away the largest database ever and use that to improve patient outcomes. And wouldn't it be great if we had an app or a website that you could go and put the patient's age, have them fill out a SHIM score, and then the questions that we've specifically asked when we're doing intake are about medications. You know, are you on blood pressure medications? Are you on beta blockers? Are you on SSRIs? Do you smoke? Do you drink heavily? Have you had heart disease, heart attack, diabetes? You know, all the things that are specific to erectile dysfunction. I'm not asking about, you know, have you had knee surgery before? That's not really relevant to what we're doing. And so we really strip the questions down to what are completely and totally relevant. And then we ask the providers, what machines are you using? I mean, that's a great study right there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is there a difference between the Zimmer machine, the Eclipse machine, the Storz machine, the BTL machine? I don't know.
It's so funny. We just got a live question saying, which acoustic wave machine do you use in your study? As are certain machines more effective than others? So I feel like you're about to expand on that.
Yeah, I mean, so the data that I presented at the Sexual Medicine Society meeting in Nashville a couple of months ago was basically our demographic data. And if you're interested in that, send me an email to research@BrandeisMD.com and I will send you the abstract, or we can, you know, what I can do is I can send it to you, Taylor, and you can put it up on the Facebook page.
Oh yeah, that would be great.
I can send you a copy of the e-poster that we created. And so a third of our providers at that point were using the a Clips device, a third we're using the Zimmer device, and a third we're using the Storz device. And so, you know, it'll be great. We should be able to compare the results. I don't know the difference, and nobody knows the difference.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the other thing is that I know about the doctors that are part of the Gainswave network is we all want to do what's best for our patients. We all want to optimize the outcome. And so if there was one machine that was better than the other, why wouldn't we all get that machine? You know, at the end of the day, we don't go into medicine to make $1 million, right? If we wanted to go into medicine, if we wanted to go make money, we'd go into real estate, or we go into Wall Street, you know, like all my friends in college did. We go into this field because at the end of the day, we want to feel good about what we're doing as physicians. We want to feel like we're doing the best we can for our patients. And we love it when patients come in with that kind of happy, giddy glow. You know, I practiced general urology for 17, 18 years. I was voted the top urologist in the San Francisco Bay Area for the past 5 years. And I gave all of that up to do sexual medicine for men. And the reason I did that is because I love it when guys come in with that kind of teenage glow on their face, and they have a really good story for me, and they're really happy. And the model for healthcare in the United States is to get someone who's sick better. But this model really is to take someone from good to great. And that's, for me, that's a lot of fun. That's what gets me up in the morning. And if I can do that, not just on an individual basis with my patients, but if I can also do that on a more global basis with all of your patients by providing the data that you need to help your patients do better, I mean, what's better than that? And if you all out there can help us by providing the data on your patients, so that I can get my statisticians and my MPH folks, you know, we have a couple of Masters of Public Health students from Berkeley coming this summer to help us out. You know, we're going to be cranking out papers, cranking out data. It's really going to be, it's going to be amazing. And the great thing is it's coming from the private practice community. It's not coming from the academic urology or academia type community. You know, they do their double-blind, placebo, sham-controlled studies, and that's fantastic. You know, in private practice, my patients aren't going to put up with, you know, a sham treatment or being randomized to placebo. You know, they want to come, they want to see me, they want to get their treatment, they want to get back to work, or they want to get home. And that's, you know, that's what we do as private practice doctors.
Right.
And what we can contribute is massive data sets.
You could definitely tell, it definitely shines through that the purpose and like the motivator for you and for the other people in the team involved with the sweet and swap studies. It is the patient centricity that really shines through. And I think that's what gives it the feel good factor. Another question we have is, the evaluation of the swap study for deformity versus sexual function for men with Peyronie's. Can you expand a little bit more on that and what that means?
Right. So once we had gotten the IRB approval for the SWEET study, I was kind of on a roll. And I was getting a lot of Peyronie's disease patients, and they're a really tough group to treat. I mean, the surgery for Peyronie's disease is, it straightens the penis, but it also shortens the penis. And guys really aren't very excited about that. And you have to take a long time off from sexual intercourse after that surgery. The other treatment, which is FDA approved, is Xiaflex, which is a collagenase, which, you know, you have to be off from sexual intercourse for about a month after each injection. And typically you would do injections in pairs. So there's usually 4 cycles. So you're going to be off from sexual intercourse for at least 4 to 6 months, which, you know, is really a bummer. And it's dreadfully expensive. So the, you know, course of treatment is $20,000-$25,000. And so clearly for those of us who treat Peyronie's patients, some patients get better. But if you look at the literature, and there was just a European Sexual Medicine Society position paper that said that they couldn't recommend shockwave therapy for the treatment of Peyronie's disease because there just wasn't enough data. And when you actually look at the individual patients, it didn't show actual improvement. Now, for those of us who treat those patients, we know that there are patients that do get better. And so, but certainly not everyone gets better. And so I do shockwave, I do Xiaflex, I do surgery, I do, I do everything. But for those of us who just do shockwave therapy, you have to know who to treat and who not to treat. And so what we do in the SWAP study is when the patients first come in, we induce an artificial erection. So we inject Trimix into the penis, create a rigid erection. We take pictures, we take measurements. Like if the Russians ever hacked into my computer, boy, they would be surprised. I got hundreds of pictures of curved penises and penises with rulers, and oh my God, I think that might be the best cybersecurity that we could ever possibly imagine. Anyway,
that's so funny.
So we document, the length, the curve, and then we bring the patient penis down with phenylephrine, and then we treat them. And my protocol is I treat them for erectile dysfunction, unless their erectile function is really good. But I treat them for erectile dysfunction because the thing is, you want to have as many erections as you possibly can. You want to get that stretch on that tissue. And then after that, I'll do between 5,000 and 10,000 shocks with the 6mm probe to break up that scar tissue. And I do it directly on the scar tissue. And then right after that, I'll have the patients use a penile stretching device. So either the vacuum erection device or a penile traction device. So there's something from Pathright Medical called the Restore X. It's made by the Mayo Clinic, or was developed by the Mayo Clinic by a guy named Landon Trost, who's a very, very good researching urologist in sexual medicine. And the data on using the Restore X with Xiaflex is that it improved curvature 15% over what not using that device. And it improved penile length about 2 centimeters over not using that device. So it's really important to use either a stretching or a traction device. And it really depends on which patient population you're looking at. And then the other thing is, so I have a lot of intelligent patients, but I also have a lot of contractors, right? And contractors are always juggling information. They may not be fully aware of what's going on. And so I have the 2x4 protocol and the 4x4 protocol. And I specifically name those things so that contractors can remember them, right? What contractor can't remember a 2x4 and a 4x4? So the 2x4 is twice a day, morning and night. Guys will stretch their penis 4 1-minute cycles. But for the Peyronie's disease patients in my protocol, it's 4 times a day, 4 1-minute cycles. And you pump it up to the point where you actually feel the stretch, then you hold it, and then you release it. And so it's the shockwave once a week or twice a week. It's the stretching. And then also I have them take Affirm. So Affirm is the nitric oxide boosting supplement that I created. And the nice thing about Affirm is that about 20% of the proceeds of the sale of Affirm goes towards supporting the SWEET study. So I actually, when I came up with the idea for the SWEET study, I went to all the device manufacturers and I said, why don't you guys all get together and give me a pool of money, and we'll do this study together. What I'll do is I'll donate my time and effort. And then if you guys give me some money, then I'll be able to hire a research coordinator and we can get the study done. And unfortunately, the device manufacturers didn't ante up any money, but I was just, for whatever crazy ass reason, I was just so driven to do the study, to find out how much this works and how we can improve the lives and the outcomes of our patients, that I just said, it's going to work out somehow. I just want to do the study. And so I ended up hiring Dr. Liu and personally funding the IRB and et cetera, et cetera. And I'm sure in the end, everything's going to work out. Where was
Awesome.
I get a little scatterbrained sometimes.
No, it's great. I think that the providers are loving it. We got another question from Mario that says, after the completion of a successful treatment package, what would be your recommended maintenance treatment plan? Monthly, quarterly, annually?
See, that's the kind of question that we're trying to answer in the SWEET study, right? So if you have a 52-year-old guy who's just taking Viagra and he gets much better and he doesn't need Viagra anymore, maybe it's once a year. But if you have a 72-year-old guy who's been diabetic for, for 15 years and he's had a heart attack, you may need to treat him once a month. We don't know. My average treatment is like every 4 months, I'll bring someone back in for a single treatment, but what that is based on is nothing. It's just based on what my best guess is. And in medicine, you don't want to be guessing. You want to actually have some hard data that you can go on. And so that's why I want to, get the funding to follow these patients long-term so that we can look a patient in the eye and say, listen, we actually know the answer to that question. And here's a website that has the algorithm for figuring out the answer to your question, but based on what the best data that we have is. So that, Mario asked a really important, critical question, and it's a question I just don't have the answer to. But in a year or two, I hope I will.
Yeah, that was going to be, as we have our last call for all questions, that was one of the questions I had. When do we plan on publishing? And I know it's a very robust amount of information to aggregate and analyze, and you have a whole team on it, but when should we plan on seeing results?
Yeah, so my personal plan at this moment, and I'm like a pinball, I bounce up kind of all over the place, but I want to have at least 1,000 patients in the study before I publish. Mm-hmm. Because if I publish with 200 patients or 250 patients, then it's just kind of a Me Too study. I want to have the study make the biggest impact. And so I want to get over 1,000 patients so that we make headlines.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We just
so that that's probably going to be a year.
Okay. I think we're all eager, but we all respect the process. And I think that you're right with the sheer amount of patients that we hope will participate, that, people will be forced to pay attention. So another question we have is, do you prefer radial pressure or focused wave?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't know the answer to that one either. The waveforms are fairly similar and they probably generate the same impact on the tissues, but no one's ever done that study. So I'm actually trying to get a focused shockwave machine in my office. And because I'm covered under the IRB, I can just start treating those patients and I can use that data to compare focused and radial shockwaves. But we don't know. So for those of you who don't really know, there's a couple of different types of shockwaves. So there's a focused shockwave where the shockwave goes towards a central point. And I think those are piezoelectric. So there's a kind of a crystal that generates a spark, and that spark generates the true shockwave that is focused on a single point. A pressure wave is different. So like the Zimmer machine uses electromagnetic energy to bounce a lead rod back and forth. And when it hits a strike plate, it generates a pressure wave. And that pressure wave, I believe, is a type of sound wave, but instead of having that nice, gentle sinusoidal wave, it's a very high peak and then a very steep drop. If you look at the waveform, and what that does is it compresses a lot of energy in that wave. And then that wave emanates from that central point of the strike plate and emanates out. Now, one part of me says, well, that's probably better because who really knows exactly where all the blood vessels are? And so by having a radial pressure wave emanate out, you're kind of getting more blood vessels. Whereas if you have a focused shock wave, you're focusing it into a central point, and who really knows exactly where the deep cavernosal artery is? I do a lot of ultrasounds on penises, and there's a lot of variability in terms of where that central artery is, but also there are peripheral arteries that are very important to that deep cavernosal artery. And the Eclipse machine is a pneumatic radial pressure wave. So it bounces a little projectile back and forth using puffs of air, which is why sometimes it takes a little while for that machine to warm up. And so that's a really long answer to a really good question, which is what's better, focused or radial pressure wave? And the answer is, I don't know. I know that they both work because I published a study a year and a half ago at the Sexual Medicine Society meeting showing that radial pressure wave with the Zimmer machine in combination with the Affirm nitric oxide booster improved the shim score 5.2 points. And so, I always sit down with my patients and look at the shim score and use the data that I put together to show that you'll move up one class. So if you're at low, on average, you'll go to moderate. If you're moderate, you're likely to go to high. If you're at high, you're likely to go to very high. And it's important to set those expectations and give them real numbers and real data. And so if someone's moderate, don't promise them that they're going to go to very high. Just sit down with them and say, okay, we're going to go from moderate to high. And then when they finish treatment, have them always fill out a shim score. And then sit down with them and say, okay, it looks like we achieved your goal that I told you about. Now, if you want to do more, if you want to try to go higher, we can use things like PRP. We can use vacuum erection device. We can put you on daily dose Cialis. Make sure you're taking your Affirm nitric oxide booster. All of those extra things that we can do, but at least you kind of achieved your goal that you set out to achieve with the patient.
Definitely. Well, as we have, let's just check if we have any last minute questions rolling in. But Dr. Brandeis, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been very enlightening for me and for all of our providers. Thank you for explaining it so clearly and thoroughly. Are there any last minute notes that you would like to add? I put the email address that you mentioned in the comments section, and everybody else, if you're watching this after the fact, please post your comments and I'll relay everything to Dr. Brandeis afterwards. But Dr. Brandeis, any closing thoughts?
Sure. So first of all, anyone that wants to join the SWEET study that's a relatively high volume provider, we're always looking to add more patients and add more enthusiastic providers. And it's fun to be part of a research endeavor. It kind of gives you a good feeling. And also you'll have the opportunity to write up the data if that's something that you're interested in. I mean, it had been 20 years since I'd written a paper, and it was kind of fun to stand back up at the podium in front of an academic meeting and talk to all the folks that were doing the research. So that's one. Two, Affirm, the nitric oxide booster that I created, and also Prelong, which is my supplement for premature ejaculation. The sales of those two supplements, we donate about 20% of the proceeds to support the SWEET study and the SWAP study. And so if you want to support either of those two endeavors and to see if we can follow these patients for not just 1 year, but 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, it would be great. You can order those wholesale. You can sell them to your patients. We give you a good markup, or you can give them to your patients to make sure that they get good outcomes from their treatment. But if you want to support the SWEET study, please support Affirm and affirmscience.com. And then also, if you, I don't know everything, and I'm more than willing to tell you what I don't know in addition to what I know. But if you have additional questions that you think of afterwards, you can email them to Taylor. And what I can do is I can make kind of a follow-up video answering all the questions that you guys have.
Thank you so much for everything that you're doing. And I'll also put the links to both of those products in the comment section too, for providers, so you don't have to go searching for them. But thank you so much, Dr. Brandeis. We really appreciate everything you're doing for this entire provider community.
Yeah, one more quick thought is that we are a community, and we're a community of intelligent physicians who are proactively doing something to help our patients improve their quality of life. And there are always going to be people out there that criticize us. In fact, every time I stand up at the podium at one of these academic meetings, there are always people that attack us or attack me and attack Gainswave and attack what we're doing. And my response is always, we're doing this because it hasn't been done by the academic urology community. And so, as a community of Gainswave providers, we should be really proud that we're all chipping in to do a study like this. And I think it's going to be amazing. We're going to really help a lot of people. There are, probably 30 or 40 million, there are 23 million Americans who take Viagra. And so if we can help those 23 million Americans have a better life and not have to pop a pill or make the pill that they pop more effective, I think it's a wonderful thing that we're all doing. And so I think we should all pat each other on the back.
I agree. And this is an awesome provider community, and we appreciate you participating and sharing everything that you're doing to further the community and further the fight to end erectile dysfunction. So thank you so much, everybody. If you have any follow-up questions, email me at taylor@vitalityconnect.com, post in the questions. And thank you, Dr. Brandeis. Have a great day.
Great. Thanks a lot, Taylor.
Bye.